Picture yourself lying beneath a vast, star-dusted sky, the air cool and fragrant with the scent of olive groves and distant pine. The world is quiet, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the faint hum of a city that never truly sleeps. This is Rome, not as it is now, but as it was, sprawling, eternal, a tapestry of ambition, glory, and quiet human moments woven across centuries. Tonight, we're not here to rush through facts or dissect battles with clinical precision. No, this is a story, a gentle unfolding of the Roman Empire's life, from its mythical birth to its fading echoes, crafted to carry you into the arms of sleep. Imagine walking along the Tiber River, its waters catching the glow of a setting sun, as voices from the past whisper tales of kings, senators, emperors, and dreamers. This is a journey through time, where marble temples rise, armies march across continents, and ordinary people live their lives under the shadow of greatness. It's history told not to startle or overwhelm, but to soothe, to let you drift into the past as if stepping into a dream. We'll wander through Rome's founding myths, its republican struggles, its imperial triumphs, and the slow, inevitable cracks that brought it low. Each moment will unfold with care, painted in colors soft enough to lull your mind, vivid enough to spark your imagination. This video is for those who love history but crave a tale that feels like a bedtime story, long, immersive, and calming. It's for those who want to learn while letting go of the day's weight, letting the rise and fall of an empire guide them toward rest. So find a comfortable place, close your eyes if you wish, and let the story of Rome wrap around you like a warm blanket. We'll travel together, step by step, through a world that shaped our own, its echoes still lingering in the stones beneath our feet. Hello, my name is Sherry, and welcome to my channel. So let's begin. Close your eyes and imagine a landscape untouched by time, where the Tiber River winds like a silver thread through rolling hills. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of wild herbs and damp earth. It's here, in this cradle of green, that our story begins, not with grand armies or marble palaces, but with a whisper of myth, a tale carried on the wind. Long before Rome was a name spoken with awe, it was a dream born in the hearts of wanderers, a spark in the wilderness. This is the story of Romulus and Remus, the twin brothers whose legend would plant the seeds of an empire. The tale begins with a princess named Rhea Silvia, daughter of a king in the ancient city of Alba Longa. Her father, Numitor, was overthrown by his treacherous brother Amulius, who, fearing prophecy, forced Rhea into a life of seclusion as a Vestal virgin. But the gods, or perhaps fate, had other plans. Rhea bore twins, fathered, so the story goes, by Mars, the god of war. When Amulius learned of the boys, his fear of their destiny drove him to a cruel act. He ordered the infants cast into the Tiber, left to the mercy of the river's current. Picture the scene, a woven basket bobbing on the water, the cries of two babes mingling with the rush of the river as the gods watched from above. Yet the Tiber was kind. The basket washed ashore at the foot of the Palatine Hill, where a she-wolf, her eyes gleaming in the twilight, found the twins. She nursed them, her rough tongue a strange comfort, her den a sanctuary beneath the roots of a fig tree. A shepherd named Faustulus, tending his flock nearby, stumbled upon this miracle. He and his wife took the boys in, raising them as their own in a humble hut, teaching them the ways of the land, how to read the stars, to hunt, to honor the gods. Romulus and Remus grew strong, their spirits wild and unbreakable, their bond as deep as the river that spared them. Years passed, and the twins' true heritage came to light. They learned of their royal blood, of Amulius's betrayal, and their grandfather Numitor's lost throne. With the fire of youth and justice in their hearts, they rallied men from the hills and overthrew the usurper, restoring Numitor to power. But the brothers' story didn't end in Alba Longa. They were restless, driven by a vision of something greater, a city of their own, a place to carve their names into eternity. They returned to the Tiber, to the very spot where the she-wolf had saved them, and there, beneath the 7 hills, they resolved to build. But dreams, even shared ones, can fracture. Romulus and Remus, so alike in courage, clashed over where their city should stand. Romulus favored the Palatine Hill, its slopes offering defense and a view of the river's bend. Remus preferred the Aventine, its gentler rise promising space. The brothers, stubborn as the gods themselves, turned to augury, seeking divine favor. Each stood on his chosen hill, watching the skies for signs. Remus saw 6 vultures, a good omen. But Romulus, ever the competitor, claimed 12. The argument grew heated, pride flaring like a spark in dry grass. Romulus began to mark his city's boundaries, digging a trench around the Palatine, declaring it sacred. Remus, in a moment of defiance or jest, leapt over the trench, mocking his brother's work. The act was a spark too far. In a flash of rage, Romulus struck Remus down, and the first blood of Rome stained the earth. The tale of Romulus and Remus is heavy with sorrow, a reminder that even the greatest beginnings can be born of loss. Romulus, now alone, pressed on. He named his city Roma after himself, and its heart was the Palatine, where the she-wolf's den still lingered in memory. He built walls of stone and dreams, inviting wanderers, outcasts, and exiles to join him. Rome's first citizens were a motley band, herders, traders, fugitives, united by a shared hope. Romulus, their king, ruled with a shepherd's care and a warrior's strength. He established rites to honor the gods, laid out the forum as a gathering place, and welcomed neighboring tribes, though not all came in peace. Life in early Rome was raw, uncertain. The city was little more than mud-brick huts clustered beneath the hills, surrounded by rival tribes like the Sabines and Etruscans. To secure his city's future, Romulus invited the Sabines to a festival, only to seize their women in a daring, desperate act to ensure Rome's growth. The Sabine women, caught between worlds, eventually brokered peace, weaving the two peoples into one. Romulus's reign was one of survival, of forging a city from the wilderness, of laying roots that would one day stretch across the world. As the stars wheel above the Palatine, Romulus's Rome stands fragile yet defiant, a flicker of light in a vast, untamed land. Its people sleep beneath thatch roofs, dreaming of glory they cannot yet imagine. But whispers of destiny already stir, whispers of a city that will outlast its founder, of a legacy that will echo through time. What trials await this newborn Rome, and what strength will it find in the years to come? As the embers of Romulus's Rome glowed faintly under the starlit canopy, the city stood like a young sapling, its roots shallow but tenacious, gripping the soil of the 7 hills. The Tiber murmured nearby, a constant companion to a settlement still finding its shape. Romulus, the first king, had carved a home from the wilderness, but his reign was only the beginning. The story of Rome now turns to its 7 kings, each a thread in the tapestry of a city learning to breathe, to grow, to dream. Picture the Palatine Hill at dawn, its slopes dotted with huts, the air alive with the bleating of goats and the clang of early forges. This is Rome in its infancy, a place of mud and ambition, ruled by men whose names would echo through the ages. Romulus, the founder, was a king of fire and vision. His rule, spanning decades, was marked by the struggle to make Rome more than a fleeting dream. He organized the city's first institutions, a senate of elders, a council of advisors drawn from the tribes he'd united. He built temples to Jupiter and Mars, their altars warmed by sacrifices that bound the people to the gods. Yet his reign was not without shadow. The abduction of the Sabine women, though it forged an alliance, left scars of mistrust. Romulus ruled with a shepherd's heart but a warrior's hand, and his death was as mysterious as his life. Some say he was taken by a storm, whisked to the heavens to join the gods. Others whispered of betrayal, of senators who grew weary of his iron will. Whatever the truth, Romulus left behind a city that bore his name and a legacy that demanded a successor. The Senate chose Numa Pompilius, a Sabine known for his wisdom and piety, to steady Rome's course. Imagine Numa walking the forum, his robes plain, his eyes thoughtful, as he sought to soften Rome's rough edges. Where Romulus was fire, Numa was water, calming the city's restless spirit. He built the Temple of Janus, its doors open in war, closed in peace, a symbol of Rome's dual nature. Numa crafted calendars, marking sacred days for festivals and rest, aligning the city with the rhythms of the heavens. He established priesthoods, weaving religion into the fabric of daily life, ensuring the gods' favor. Under Numa, Rome learned to pause, to reflect, to honor something beyond survival. The Tiber's banks grew quieter, the people more united, as Numa's gentle hand guided them. Yet, as his long reign ended, the question lingered. Could Rome thrive without a warrior's edge? Tullus Hostilius, the third king, answered with a resounding clash of iron. Picture him striding through Rome's gates, his armor gleaming, his gaze fixed on distant horizons. Tullus was war incarnate, a king who saw Rome's future in conquest. He led campaigns against neighboring tribes, crushing Alba Longa, the city of Rome's origins, in a brutal display of power. The story of the Horata and Curiatii, three brothers from each side fighting to settle a war, became legend, a tale of sacrifice and loyalty that stirred Roman hearts. Tullus built the Curia, a meeting place for the Senate, but his focus was the battlefield. His reign was a firestorm, expanding Rome's borders but straining its unity. When a plague struck, Tullus, ever defiant, sought to appease the gods with rituals. Yet his arrogance drew divine wrath, or so the stories say, and he perished in a bolt of lightning, leaving Rome to wonder what kind of king it needed next. Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, blended the piety of Numa with the ambition of Tullus. Imagine him standing at the Tiber's edge, envisioning a Rome that reached beyond its hills. Ancus was a builder, extending the city's walls and constructing the Pons Sublicius, Rome's first bridge, its wooden planks a symbol of connection. He founded Ostia, a port at the Tiber's mouth, where ships brought grain and dreams of trade. Ancus welcomed outsiders, swelling Rome's population, but he was no stranger to war. He subdued the Latins, strengthening Rome's grip on the region. His reign was a balance, growth tempered by care, expansion rooted in stability. As Ancus aged, Rome stood stronger, its streets bustling, its future bright. But ambition, like a restless wind, stirred once more. The fifth king, Tarquin the Elder, brought a new flavor to Rome. A man of Etruscan blood, he was an outsider who won the throne with charisma and cunning. Picture him overseeing the city's transformation, his vision turning mud into marble. Tarquin drained the forum's marshes, laying stones for a marketplace that hummed with life. He built the Circus Maximus, where chariots raced to the roar of crowds, and began the great temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. His reign was one of splendor, but also of tension. His wealth and foreign ways unsettled some, planting seeds of distrust. Tarquin's Rome was grander, but its heart beat uneasily, yearning for a ruler who felt truly Roman. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus's death ushered in Servius Tullius, a king of humble origins, said to be born of a slave. Servius was a reformer, organizing Rome's citizens into classes based on wealth, not birth. He built new walls, expanded the city's boundaries, and strengthened its defenses. His reign was a bridge between the old Rome and something new, a city of order and ambition. Yet his rise, tied to Tarquin's widow, sparked whispers of illegitimacy. The past, it seemed, was never far away. The final king, Tarquin the Proud, ascended with a shadow over his name. His rule was marked by tyranny, his ambition unchecked. Picture Rome's streets, now lined with stone but heavy with fear. Tarquin's arrogance alienated the people, his taxes and wars draining their spirit. The rape of Lucretia, a noblewoman, by his son became the spark that would burn the monarchy to ash. As the people gathered, their voices rising like a tide, Rome stood on the edge of revolution. What would this city become, freed from the weight of kings? The answer lies just beyond the horizon, where a new Rome waits to be born. Imagine the air in Rome heavy with the scent of smoke and resolve, the year 509 BCE. The seven hills, once ruled by the iron will of kings, now hum with the murmurs of a people ready to govern themselves. The Tiber flows steadily, reflecting torchlight as citizens gather in the forum, their faces lit by hope and defiance. The reign of Tarquin the Proud has ended, not in a quiet passing, but in a firestorm of outrage. The story of Lucretia, a virtuous woman wronged by the king's son, has spread like wildfire, igniting the hearts of Romans. Her tragedy, her demand for justice, has toppled a monarchy. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, picture Rome standing at a crossroads, its future uncertain but alive with possibility. This is the birth of the Roman Republic, a city learning to rule itself under the stars. The expulsion of Tarquin the Proud was no small feat. Picture a man named Lucius Junius Brutus, his eyes fierce yet weary, standing before a crowd in the Forum. He is no king, but his words carry the weight of one. Brutus, a nobleman who hid his cunning behind a mask of simplicity, rallied the people against Tarquin's tyranny. With Lucretia's husband, Collatinus, at his side, he swore an oath that no king would ever again hold Rome in chains. The gates of the city were barred to Tarquin, who fled to the Etruscans, seeking allies to reclaim his throne. But Rome, like a young colt finding its legs, refused to bend. The people chose Brutus and Collatinus as their first consuls, two leaders elected to share power, a safeguard against the return of tyranny. The Republic was born, not in grandeur, but in the quiet strength of a people united. Life in this new Rome was raw, unpolished. The Forum, still half-marsh, buzzed with merchants, farmers, and priests, their voices mingling in a cacophony of debate. The Senate, once a council of the king's advisors, now grew in influence, its patrician members, wealthy landowners, guiding the city's course. Yet the Republic was not a utopia. The patricians, proud of their ancient bloodlines, held power tightly, while the plebeians, common folk, artisans, and farmers demanded a voice. Picture a plebeian standing in the Forum, his hands calloused from toil, his eyes fixed on the Senate House. He is not a senator, but his labor feeds Rome, his sons defend it. The tension between these two classes, patrician and plebeian, would shape the Republic's soul, a struggle as vital as the Tiber's current. The early Republic faced threats from without as well. Tarquin, exiled but unyielding, rallied Etruscan allies to march on Rome. Imagine the city's walls, still rough-hewn, manned by farmers turned soldiers, their spears glinting in the dawn. The Battle of Silva Arcia was a brutal clash, where Brutus himself fell, his life given to secure Rome's freedom. Yet the Republic endured, its consuls replaced yearly, its people learning to trust in shared rule. The Senate crafted laws, the assemblies voted, and slowly Rome began to feel like a city of citizens, not subjects. The Licinian section laws, passed after years of plebeian protests, granted commoners the right to hold high office, a quiet victory that echoed through the hills. The Republic's institutions took shape like a house built stone by stone. The consuls, elected annually, led the armies and oversaw justice, their power checked by their short terms and shared authority. The Senate advised, debated, and preserved tradition, its chambers filled with the weight of history. The assemblies, where citizens gathered to vote, gave voice to the people, though the patricians' influence often tipped the scales. Picture a Roman citizen, his toga stained with the dust of the day, casting a vote in the Campus Martius, his heart swelling with pride. This was Rome's promise, a city where a man's voice, however faint, could shape its destiny. Yet the Republic was not without its shadows. The plebeians, tired of patrician dominance, staged the first secession of the plebs, withdrawing to the Aventine Hill in protest. Imagine the city stilled, its markets empty, its forges cold, as the plebeians demanded reform. The creation of the tribune of the plebs, a magistrate to protect commoners' rights, was a compromise that eased tensions but did not erase them. Rome was learning to balance power, to weave unity from discord, but the process was slow, like the carving of a statue from rough marble. Beyond its walls, Rome faced neighbors who saw its youth as weakness. The Latin League, tribes bound by blood and history, challenged Rome's growing influence. Picture the Battle of Lake Regillus, where Roman legions, led by the consul Postumius, clashed with Latin spears under a stormy sky. The victory was hard-won, but it secured Rome's place as a leader among its neighbors. The treaty that followed, the Foedus Cassianum, bound the Latins to Rome, not as subjects but as allies, a bond that would strengthen both. As the Republic grew, so did its ambitions. The Seven Hills, once a cluster of villages, now pulsed with life, temples rising, markets expanding, roads stretching beyond the horizon. The people, patrician and plebeian alike, began to see themselves as Romans, united by a shared dream. Yet the city was still young, its foundations tested by every storm. The Tiber flowed on, carrying stories of struggle and triumph, whispering of a Rome that could one day dominate the world. But what would it take for this fledgling republic to rise above its rivals, to carve a name that echoed beyond the hills? The answer lies in the battles and dreams that await, as Rome steps boldly into a new age. Picture Rome in the early days of its republic, a city cradled by the 7 hills, its streets alive with the clamor of ambition. The Tiber glints under a late afternoon sun, its waters carrying barges laden with grain and whispers of distant lands. The year is somewhere in the 4th century BCE, and Rome, no longer a mere cluster of villages, is stretching its limbs, testing its strength against the world beyond its walls. The forum hums with senators in white togas, their voices weaving plans, while farmers-turned-soldiers drill in the campus Martius, their spears catching the light. This is a Rome learning to stand tall, its heart beating with the pulse of conquest and unity. As you settle into the quiet of this tale, let the story of Rome's rise carry you, like a gentle current, toward the edge of sleep. The Republic, still young, was surrounded by neighbors who eyed its growth with suspicion. To the south, the Samnites, fierce warriors of the Apennine Mountains, held sway over rugged valleys. To the north, Etruscan cities, with their painted tombs and ancient rituals, guarded their wealth. Rome, caught between these powers, knew survival meant expansion. The Latin League, once allies under the Foedus Cassianum, began to chafe under Rome's leadership. Picture a Roman consul, his face lined with resolve, standing before the Senate, urging unity as threats loomed. The Republic's early wars were not grand campaigns, but gritty struggles, fought by citizen soldiers who returned to their plows when the fighting ceased. The Samnite Wars, stretching across decades, were Rome's crucible. Imagine a legion marching through a misty mountain pass, the air sharp with pine and danger. The Samnites, masters of guerrilla tactics, struck from the shadows, their javelins finding gaps in Roman shields. The Battle of the Caudine Forks in 321 BCE was a bitter lesson. Picture Roman soldiers, trapped in a narrow valley, their pride shattered as they passed under a Samnite yoke, heads bowed in surrender. Yet Rome's spirit was not broken. The Republic rebuilt, reformed its legions, and returned with iron resolve. By the Third Samnite War, Rome's discipline, its maniples, flexible units of men moving like a living machine, proved unstoppable. The victory at Sentinum in 295 BCE, where Romans and their allies clashed with a coalition of Samnites, Gauls, and Etruscans, marked a turning point. The Samnites knelt, and Rome's grip on central Italy tightened. With each victory, Rome's reach grew. The Via Appia, a road of smooth stone, stretched south from the city, its path lined with milestones and the dreams of traders. Picture carts rumbling along its surface, carrying wine, olives, and news of Rome's glory. Colonies sprouted in conquered lands, each a miniature Rome with its own forum and temples, binding Italy to the Republic's heart. The plebeians, once voiceless, now saw their sons rise as magistrates, their votes shaping laws like the Lex Hortensia, which gave their assemblies equal weight to the Senate. Rome was no longer just a city. It was an idea, a promise of order and strength. Yet power brought new challenges. To the south, the Greek cities of Magna Graecia, like Tarentum, watched Rome's advance with unease. These were cities of marble and philosophy, their harbors filled with ships from Athens and Syracuse. When Rome's legions pressed too close, Tarentum called for aid from across the sea. Enter Pyrrhus of Epirus, a king with dreams of Alexander's mantle. Picture him landing in Italy in 280 BCE, his war elephants lumbering through olive groves, their trumpets unnerving Roman horses. The Battle of Heraclea was a clash of worlds, Greek phalanxes against Roman maniples, elephants against courage. Pyrrhus won, but at a cost so high his victories bled him dry. One more such victory, he sighed, and I am undone. The term Pyrrhic victory was born, a testament to Rome's refusal to yield. Pyrrhus's campaigns, though fierce, could not halt Rome's tide. By 272 BCE, Tarentum fell, and southern Italy bowed to the Republic. Imagine the forum that night, torches blazing as citizens celebrated, their voices rising in songs of triumph. Rome now controlled the Italian peninsula, from the Po Valley to the toe of the boot. Its legions, hardened by years of war, were a machine of discipline and loyalty. The Senate, once a council of elders, now debated matters of empire, its chambers echoing with plans for roads, aqueducts, and alliances. The plebeians, too, shared in the glory, their tribunes guarding their rights, their sons marching in the legions. But Rome's rise was not just a story of swords and stones. It was a city of people, merchants haggling in markets, priests tending altars, mothers weaving by lamplight. Picture a Roman family gathered around a hearth, the father recounting tales of the Samnite wars, the children wide-eyed with wonder. These were the threads that wove Rome's strength, the quiet moments that fueled its dreams. The gods, too, watched over the city. Temples to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva rose on the Capitoline, their marble glowing under the moon. Festivals filled the streets with laughter and offerings, binding the people to their past and their future. As Rome stood atop its peninsula, its gaze began to drift beyond the sea. The Mediterranean, a vast blue expanse, shimmered with promise and peril. Across the waves lay Carthage, a city of merchants and mariners, its ships dominating the western seas. Rome, now master of Italy, could not ignore this rival. The stage was set for a clash that would shake the world, a war that would test the Republic's soul. What would happen when these two powers met, their ambitions colliding like storm clouds over the sea? The answer lies in the fires of war, where Rome's destiny hangs in the balance. Imagine a Mediterranean night, the sea a dark mirror under a sky pricked with stars. Along the Tiber, Rome's docks hum with quiet activity, merchants unloading amphorae, sailors mending nets, their voices low against the lapping waves. It's the 3rd century BCE, and Rome, now master of Italy, stands like a young giant, its gaze fixed across the water. The Republic has grown strong, its legions hardened, its roads stretching like veins across the peninsula. Yet beyond the horizon lies Carthage, a city of golden markets and towering ships, its power rooted in the sea. As you settle into the soft rhythm of this tale, let the clash of these titans unfold, a story of fire and endurance to carry you toward sleep. The First Punic War began in 264 BCE, a spark ignited over Sicily, an island rich with grain and ambition. Picture Rome's Senate, its marble halls filled with debate, as envoys from Messana plead for protection against Carthage's grasp. Rome, untested at sea, faced a rival whose navy ruled the waves like a god. Carthage's ships, sleek and swift, carried wealth from Africa to Spain, their sails catching the wind with ease. Rome, with no fleet to speak of, built one from scratch, copying a wrecked Carthaginian vessel. Imagine shipwrights hammering in the dawn, their sweat mingling with the salt air, as Rome's first quinquiremes, mighty warships with rows of oars, took shape. The Romans added a twist, the corvus, a spiked boarding bridge that turned sea battles into land fights, letting their legions' discipline shine. The war was a grueling dance across the sea. Picture Roman sailors, farmers not long ago, clinging to oars as storms battered their ships. Battles like Mylae in 260 BCE saw Rome's corvus tear through Carthaginian lines, but victories came at a cost. Storms sank fleets, and Carthage's resilience matched Rome's own. The war dragged on for over 2 decades, each side bleeding gold and lives. In 241 BCE, at the Aegates Islands, Rome's navy struck a final blow, cutting Carthage's supply lines to Sicily. Picture the sea churning with broken oars and sinking ships, the horizon red with the setting sun. Carthage sued for peace, ceding Sicily and paying a heavy price. Rome, exhausted but triumphant, had won its first overseas province. The Tiber's docks grew busier, its waters now carrying the spoils of war. Yet peace was fleeting. Carthage, wounded but proud, rebuilt under the Barca family. Enter Hamilcar, a general whose shadow loomed large, and his son Hannibal, a boy destined to haunt Rome's dreams. The Second Punic War, beginning in 218 BCE, was no mere border skirmish. It was a clash of wills that shook the world. Hannibal, barely a man, swore an oath to his father to never be a friend to Rome. Picture him crossing the Alps, a feat of madness and genius, his army of men, horses, and elephants battling snow and stone. The elephants, towering beasts with thundering steps, struck fear into Roman hearts, their trumpets echoing through mountain passes. Hannibal's army, a mosaic of Numidians, Gauls, and Africans, descended into Italy like a storm. The Battle of Trebia in 218 BCE was Hannibal's first strike. Imagine Roman legions, shivering in the winter mist, ambushed by his cavalry, their formations crumbling under the weight of surprise. Lake Trasimene followed, a trap laid in fog, where Roman soldiers fell by the thousands, their blood staining the water. Then came Cannae in 216 BCE, a masterpiece of carnage. Picture Hannibal's crescent formation, baiting Rome's army into a trap, his cavalry closing like jaws. Nearly 50,000 Romans perished, the fields littered with shields and dreams. Rome's allies wavered, its people trembled, yet the Republic refused to break. The Senate, faces grim, raised new legions, calling on every citizen to stand firm. Rome's response was not to meet Hannibal head-on, but to outlast him. Fabius Maximus, the delayer, harassed Hannibal's supply lines, avoiding open battle. Picture Roman scouts moving under moonlight, striking camps and vanishing into the hills. Hannibal roamed Italy for years, winning battles but losing ground, his army dwindling. Rome, meanwhile, struck at Carthage's heart, sending Scipio Africanus to Spain and Africa. In 202 BCE, at Zama, Scipio faced Hannibal on Carthaginian soil. Imagine the dust rising as Roman legions met war elephants, their discipline holding against the charge. Scipio's victory was Rome's triumph, forcing Carthage to its knees. Hannibal fled, and Carthage became a shadow, its power ceded to Rome. The Third Punic War, from 149 to 146 BCE, was less a war than an execution. Rome, now a Mediterranean power, could not abide Carthage's lingering presence. Picture Roman legions besieging the city, its walls crumbling under fire and time. When Carthage fell, its streets were razed, its people scattered, its name a warning to others. Rome now ruled the western Mediterranean. Sicily, Sardinia, Spain, and North Africa all bore its mark. The Via Appia stretched farther, aqueducts rose, and the Forum gleamed with captured gold. Yet victory brought unease. Picture a Roman farmer, his fields neglected for war, watching wealthy senators grow richer on conquest spoils. The Republic's heart, once bound by shared struggle, began to strain under the weight of wealth and power. The plebeians, who fought and died, saw their voices drowned by patrician greed. Rome stood taller, but its foundations trembled, as new questions whispered through its streets. What happens when a republic, forged in unity, begins to fracture under its own success? The answer lies in the shadows of Rome's glory, where ambition and unrest stir like a gathering storm. As the Mediterranean moon casts its silver glow over Rome, the city stands transformed, its skyline sharper with marble temples and bustling ports. The year is the 2nd century BCE, and the Republic, fresh from its triumphs over Carthage, is a colossus astride the sea. The Tiber flows heavy with trade, carrying grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, and whispers of distant lands. Yet beneath the grandeur, beneath the cheers of the Forum and the clink of gold in patrician coffers, a quiet unease stirs. Picture a Roman street at dusk, where a farmer, his hands rough from toil, passes a senator's gilded litter, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment, worlds apart, yet bound by the same city. This is Rome at the height of its republic, where victory sows the seeds of discord, and the cracks in its foundation begin to show. Let this tale unfold gently, carrying you toward the soft edges of sleep. The Punic Wars filled Rome's granaries and its pride, but they also reshaped its soul. The Republic, once a city of farmers who fought and returned to their plows, now governed provinces stretching from Spain to Africa. Wealth poured in, but it pooled in the hands of the few. Senators and equites, the elite, bought up vast estates, latifundia, worked by slaves captured in war. Picture rolling hills once dotted with small farms, now swallowed by sprawling plantations, their fields tilled by chained hands under a relentless sun. The Roman farmer, the backbone of the legions, found himself landless, pushed to the city's crowded slums, his voice drowned in the clamor of a changing Rome. Into this divide stepped two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, their names destined to echo through the ages. Imagine Tiberius, a young tribune in 133 BCE, standing in the Forum, his voice steady but urgent, speaking for the dispossessed. He proposed a law to redistribute public land to the poor, to restore the small farms that fed Rome's spirit. The Senate, guardians of privilege, bristled at the idea, their togas stiff with indignation. Tiberius's law passed, but at a cost. Picture the Forum that night, torches flaring as senators and their allies rallied against him. In a burst of violence, unheard of in Rome's sacred heart, Tiberius was clubbed to death, his body cast into the Tiber. The river, once a savior to Romulus and Remus, now carried a martyr's blood, a grim omen of discord to come. Gaius, younger but no less bold, took up his brother's cause a decade later. Picture him addressing a restless crowd, his words weaving hope and defiance. Gaius went further, proposing reforms to curb corruption, secure grain for the poor, and extend citizenship to Rome's allies. His vision was a republic for all, not just the elite. But the Senate, entrenched in power, saw only a threat. Violence erupted again, and Gaius, cornered on the Aventine Hill, fell with thousands of his supporters. Imagine the silence that followed, broken only by the Tiber's murmur, as Rome grappled with the cost of its divisions. The Gracchi brothers were gone, but their dreams lingered, seeds planted in the hearts of the people. The Republic's troubles were not only internal. Rome's provinces, won through blood, demanded governance, and with it came corruption. Governors plundered their territories, returning to Rome with fortunes while leaving resentment in their wake. Picture a merchant in Spain, his taxes bleeding him dry, cursing the Roman eagle. The social war 91-88 BCE erupted when Rome's Italian allies, long denied citizenship, rebelled. Imagine legions clashing with men who once fought beside them, the fields of Italy stained red. Rome won, but only by granting citizenship, swelling the Republic's rolls with new voices, new tensions. The Republic was growing, but so were its burdens. Into this fractured world stepped Gaius Marius, a soldier of humble birth whose name would reshape Rome. Picture him, weathered and scarred, rallying legions with a voice like thunder. Marius reformed the army, opening its ranks to the landless poor, arming them with Rome's coin and their own desperation. His legions, loyal to their general above the state, crushed enemies like the Cimbri and Teutons, barbarian tribes threatening Rome's borders. Yet Marius's reforms had a shadow. Soldiers now looked to their commanders for land and rewards, not the Senate. Picture a legionary, his loyalty tied to Marius's banner, not the Republic's eagle, as he marches through foreign lands. Marius's rival, Sulla, cast an even darker shadow. A patrician with a fox's cunning, Sulla saw power not in reform but in control. When the Senate denied him command, he did the unthinkable. He marched his army on Rome in 88 BC. Imagine the city's gates, once symbols of strength, trembling as Sulla's legions stormed through. The Republic, built on the sanctity of its laws, reeled as Sulla declared himself dictator, purging his enemies with lists of the condemned. Blood ran in the Forum, and fear replaced debate. Sulla eventually stepped down, restoring the Senate's power, but the precedent was set. Rome could be held by force. As the Republic staggered, its people felt the weight of change. Picture a mother in a tenement, her children hungry, watching senators feast in distant villas. The Forum, once a place of unity, now echoed with anger and ambition. Rome's victories had made it rich, but its heart was divided, between rich and poor, general and senator, loyalty and law. The Republic stood strong, its provinces vast, its legions unmatched, but the cracks were widening, threatening to swallow its ideals. What happens when a city built on shared dreams begins to serve only a few? The answer lies in the rise of a man whose ambition would test Rome's very soul, his shadow looming over the Republic's final days. As the moon hangs low over Rome, casting shadows across the Forum's weathered stones, the Republic stands at a precipice. It's the 1st century BCE, and the city pulses with a restless energy, its streets a tangle of ambition and discontent. The Tiber flows quietly, reflecting the flicker of torches carried by senators, soldiers, and dreamers. The victories of the Punic Wars and the conquests of Italy have made Rome a titan, its reach stretching from the pillars of Hercules to the sands of Syria. Yet within its walls, the Republic frays, its ideals strained by wealth, power, and the hunger of men who would be kings. Picture a figure striding through the forum, his eyes sharp, his smile disarming. A man named Julius Caesar, whose name will echo through time. As you drift towards sleep, let his story unfold, a tale of brilliance and betrayal to carry you into the night. Julius Caesar was born in 100 BCE, a patrician of the Julii, a family ancient but faded in wealth. Picture a young Caesar, his toga crisp, navigating Rome's political maze with a poet's charm and a general's cunning. The Republic was a storm of rivalries, Marius's populism clashing with Sulla's aristocratic iron. Caesar, aligned with the populars, the faction of the people, learned early to wield words like weapons. He rose through the ranks, a quaestor, then aedile, dazzling Rome with lavish games funded by borrowed gold. Imagine the circus Maximus roaring as chariots thundered, the crowd chanting Caesar's name, their cheers a currency he spent wisely. Caesar's ambition found its stage beyond Rome's borders. As governor of Hispania, he led campaigns against local tribes, his legions carving victories through rugged hills. Picture him on horseback, his crimson cloak billowing, rallying soldiers with promises of glory and gold. His triumphs earned him a consulship in 59 BCE, but Rome's Senate, wary of his rise, sought to clip his wings. They assigned him Gaul, modern France and Belgium, a wild land of forests and warring tribes. To them, it was a leash. To Caesar, it was a canvas. Over a decade, from 58 to 50 BCE, he waged the Gallic Wars, a campaign of breathtaking audacity. Imagine misty forests where Roman legions, disciplined and relentless, clashed with Gallic warriors, their war cries echoing through the trees. Vercingetorix, a Gallic chieftain, united his people in a final stand at Alesia in 52 BCE. Picture the siege. Roman fortifications encircling a hilltop fortress, Caesar's men starving out their foes while fending off a relief army. His victory was total. Gaul was Rome's, and Caesar's name was a legend. Yet conquest abroad fueled tension at home. Rome's Senate, led by men like Pompey, once Caesar's ally, grew uneasy. Pompey, the Republic's darling, had tamed the East, his triumphs filling Rome's coffers. Picture the two men, once bound by marriage, Caesar's daughter Julia wed to Pompey, now drifting apart, their alliance crumbling under the weight of pride. The Senate, fearing Caesar's power, demanded he disband his army and return as a private citizen. To obey was to surrender, to defy was to challenge Rome itself. In 49 BCE, Caesar made his choice. Picture the Rubicon, a shallow river marking Italy's boundary, its waters glinting under a winter moon. Caesar, astride his horse, paused, then crossed with his legions, declaring, "The die is cast." The Republic trembled as civil war began. Caesar's march on Rome was swift, his legions loyal to their general, not the state. Pompey and the Senate fled, regrouping in Greece. Picture the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BCE, where Caesar's smaller force outmaneuvered Pompey's, the field strewn with the wreckage of old alliances. Pompey fled to Egypt, only to be betrayed and slain, his head presented to Caesar as a grim gift. Caesar, now master of Rome, pursued his enemies to Egypt, where he met Cleopatra, a queen whose wit matched his own. Imagine them on a barge along the Nile, their alliance weaving love and strategy, securing Egypt's grain for Rome's hungry masses. Back in Rome, Caesar's power grew absolute. He reformed the calendar, creating the Julian system that shaped time itself. He rebuilt the Forum, its new temples gleaming with ambition. Yet his reforms, debt relief, land for veterans, stirred resentment among the elite. Picture the Senate, its chambers thick with whispers, as men like Brutus and Cassius, once Caesar's allies, plotted in the shadows. They called themselves liberators, defenders of the Republic's ideals, but fear and envy drove their hands. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar entered the Senate, his toga draped with the weight of power. Imagine the moment. Daggers flashing, senators closing in, Caesar falling beneath the statue of Pompey, his blood pooling on the marble floor. 23 wounds ended a life that had reshaped Rome, but his death did not restore the Republic. It broke it further. Rome stood stunned, its streets silent save for the wail of mourners. Caesar's will named his great-nephew Octavian as heir, a young man barely known, yet destined to inherit a fractured world. Picture the Forum that night, torches flickering as crowds gathered, torn between grief and fear. The Republic, built on shared power, now teetered, its laws no match for the loyalty of legions or the ambition of men. Caesar's shadow lingered, his reforms enduring, his name a spark that would ignite a new era. What happens when a republic, forged in unity, is torn by the very men who swore to protect it? The answer lies in the rise of a new order, where one man's vision will reshape Rome's destiny forever. Picture Rome in the aftermath of Caesar's fall, its streets awash with uncertainty, the year 44 BCE. The Forum, once a stage for debate, now echoes with the shouts of mourners and the whispers of schemers. The Tiber flows steadily, carrying the weight of a city on the cusp of transformation. Julius Caesar's blood stains the Senate floor, but his legacy burns brighter, a beacon for those who would seize his mantle. The Republic, battered by civil war and ambition, teeters like a ship in a storm. Into this chaos steps a young man, barely 19, his eyes sharp with purpose, Gaius Octavius, soon to be known as Augustus. As you settle into the quiet rhythm of this tale, let the story of Rome's rebirth as an empire unfold, a gentle current to guide you toward sleep. Caesar's assassination left a void, and Rome, like a restless child, sought a new hand to guide it. Octavian, named heir in Caesar's will, arrived in the city with little but his name and a fierce resolve. Picture him, slight and pale, standing before a crowd in the Forum, his voice steady despite his youth. He claimed Caesar's legacy, rallying veterans and citizens with promises of justice and stability. But he was not alone. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general, burned with charisma and ambition, his legions devoted to his cause. Picture Antony, his armor gleaming, addressing soldiers under a blood-red sky, his words weaving loyalty and defiance. The Republic's old guard, led by men like Cicero, clung to the dream of a senatorial Rome, while assassins like Brutus and Cassius sought to defend their liberated republic with swords. The years that followed were a tangle of alliances and betrayals, a dance of power across the Mediterranean. Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus, a wealthy ally, formed the Second Triumvirate in 43 BCE, a fragile pact to share Rome's rule. Imagine their meeting, cloaked in secrecy, as they carved up the Republic's provinces like a feast. Their unity was ruthless. They unleashed proscriptions, lists of enemies to be hunted, their blood staining Rome's streets. Cicero, the Republic's voice, fell to Antony's wrath, his hands and head nailed to the Forum's rostra. Picture the city holding its breath, its people caught between fear and hope, as the triumvirs turned on Caesar's killers. At Philippi in 42 BCE, the armies of Octavian and Antony met Brutus and Cassius in a clash that would bury the Republic's last defenders. Imagine the Macedonian plains, dust rising as legions collided, the air thick with the clang of swords and the cries of the fallen. Brutus and Cassius, defeated, took their own lives, leaving Octavian and Antony to divide the spoils. But their alliance was a house built on sand. Antony, drawn to the east, found himself in the arms of Cleopatra, Egypt's queen. Picture them in Alexandria, their court a whirl of silk and ambition, their love a spark that threatened Rome's unity. Octavian, meanwhile, consolidated power in the west, his quiet cunning outpacing Antony's fiery charisma. Rome watched, its people weary of war, as the rift grew. Octavian, ever the strategist, painted Antony as a traitor enthralled by a foreign queen. In 31 BCE, the final act played out at Actium, a naval battle off Greece's coast. Picture the sea churning, ships locked in a deadly dance, as Octavian's admiral, Agrippa, outmaneuvered Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The lovers fled, their dreams of empire sinking with their ships. A year later in Alexandria, they fell, Antony to his sword, Cleopatra to her own hand, legend says, with an asp's bite. Octavian stood alone, the master of Rome's world. By 27 BCE, Octavian reshaped Rome's destiny. Picture him before the Senate, his face calm but commanding as he accepted the title Augustus, meaning revered one. He was no king, he insisted, but the princeps, the first citizen, guiding the republic's remnants. The Senate retained its dignity, but Augustus held the reins, commander of the legions, overseer of provinces, high priest of Rome's gods. The republic was gone in all but name, replaced by an empire cloaked in tradition. Imagine the Forum transformed, its temples gleaming with new marble, its arches celebrating Augustus's victories. The Pax Romana, a golden age of peace, began, its calm spreading across a weary world. Augustus rebuilt Rome, turning mud into splendor. Picture the Palatine Hill, now crowned with his palace, its courtyards filled with poets like Virgil, whose Aeneid wove Rome's myths into its future. Aqueducts carried water to bustling markets, roads linked distant provinces, and the legions, now a standing army, guarded borders from the Rhine to the Euphrates. The Tiber, once a humble river, now bore ships laden with the empire's wealth, silk from the east, grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul. Augustus's Rome was a city of order, its chaos tamed, its people bound by a shared dream of eternity. Yet this empire was not without its shadows. Picture Augustus at night, pacing his palace, haunted by the cost of power. His family, meant to secure his legacy, was marred by tragedy, his daughter Julia exiled, his heirs dying young. The Senate, though honored, was a shadow of its former self, its debates mere echoes. The people, fed by imperial grain, cheered Augustus, but their voices no longer shaped Rome's course. The empire stood strong, its marble shining under the sun, but it was built on the ashes of a republic that once prized freedom. As Augustus's reign stretched on, Rome became a city of wonders, its streets alive with the hum of a new era. But what would this empire become, when one man's vision could no longer hold its vastness together? The answer lies in the years ahead, where Rome's glory will soar to new heights, and its challenges will test its soul. Imagine Rome under a golden sun, its marble gleaming like a beacon across the Mediterranean. The year is 117 CE, and the empire, born from Augustus's vision, stretches from the misty shores of Britannia to the sun-scorched sands of Mesopotamia. The Tiber flows through a city transformed, its forums bustling with traders from every corner of the known world, their voices mingling with the scent of spices and incense. Temples to Jupiter and Venus tower over the 7 hills, their columns catching the light, while aqueducts hum with the lifeblood of the city, water for baths, fountains, and gardens. This is Rome at its zenith, under the rule of the 5 good emperors, a time of peace and splendor known as the Pax Romana. As you drift toward sleep, let this tale of Rome's golden age wrap around you, a soft blanket of history to ease you into dreams. The Pax Romana, begun under Augustus, reached its height under Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, emperors whose reigns, from 96 to 180 CE, brought stability rare in Rome's turbulent history. Picture Nerva, the first, an old senator chosen to heal a fractured empire after the tyrant Domitian's fall. His brief rule was a bridge, his laws easing taxes and restoring trust. Trajan followed, a soldier emperor with a conqueror's heart. Imagine him riding at the head of his legions, his cloak dusted with the sands of Dacia, modern Romania, where he won vast gold mines that filled Rome's coffers. Trajan's campaigns pushed the empire to its greatest extent, from the Atlantic to the Persian Gulf. Picture his forum, grander than any before, its markets alive with silk from China, amber from the Baltic, and the chatter of 100 tongues. Trajan's Rome was a city of wonders. The Colosseum, completed under his predecessors, hosted games where gladiators fought to the roar of 50,000 voices. Picture the arena, its sands stained with courage, as crowds cheered for heroes and emperors alike. Trajan built baths, vast complexes of marble and mosaics, where Romans of all classes soaked in warm pools, their laughter echoing off tiled walls. His column, a spiral of carved victories, stood as a testament to Rome's might, its stories read by torchlight. The empire's roads, stretching thousands of miles, carried legions and merchants, binding provinces to the eternal city. Imagine a traveler on the Via Appia, his cart rumbling past milestones, knowing Rome's reach protected him from bandits and chaos. Hadrian, Trajan's successor, was a wanderer with a poet's soul. Picture him walking the empire's frontiers, his eyes tracing the horizon. He built walls, not just to defend, but to define. Hadrian's Wall in Britannia, a stone serpent across misty hills, marked the empire's edge, its forts manned by soldiers dreaming of warmer lands. Hadrian loved Greece, weaving its culture into Rome's. His Pantheon, with its dome open to the sky, was a marvel, its oculus letting sunlight spill onto marble floors. Imagine Romans gathered beneath it, offering prayers to all gods, their whispers rising like smoke. Hadrian's villa at Tivoli, a sprawling retreat, mirrored the empire's diversity, gardens, statues, and pools reflecting Egypt, Greece, and Rome in one harmonious dream. Antoninus Pius, the next emperor, ruled with a father's care. Picture him in the Senate, his voice gentle but firm as he governed without conquest, his reign a quiet hymn to peace. He built aqueducts and temples, but his true legacy was stability. The empire hummed along, its provinces prosperous, its people fed by grain ships sailing from Egypt. Antoninus's Rome was a city where a baker in the Subura, kneading dough by lamplight, could live beside a senator, their lives entwined by the empire's order. The Pax Romana meant safety, a world where a merchant could travel from Antioch to Londinium with Rome's eagle overhead. Marcus Aurelius, the last of the five, was a philosopher-emperor, his nights spent writing meditations by candlelight. Picture him in a tent on the Danube frontier, his breath visible in the cold, as he pondered duty and mortality. His reign was not all peace. Plagues and barbarian raids tested Rome's strength. Yet Marcus faced them with stoicism, his legions holding the line against Marcomanni tribes. Imagine a Roman soldier, his shield heavy, standing watch on a snowy riverbank, his loyalty to Marcus unwavering. Marcus's Rome was a city of ideas, where philosophers debated in shaded porticos and poets sang of an eternal city. Life in this Rome was vibrant, layered. Picture a market in the Forum Boarium, where cattle load beside stalls of figs, olives, and pottery. A woman weaves a tunic in a tenement, her children playing in the street, while a scribe in a villa copies scrolls of Virgil. The empire's diversity was its strength. Greeks, Syrians, Gauls, and Egyptians called themselves Romans, their lives woven into the empire's fabric. Temples to Isis and Mithras stood beside those of Jupiter, their altars warm with offerings. The baths, open to all, were a great equalizer, where a slave might soak beside a senator, their laughter mingling in the steam. Yet even at its height, Rome bore shadows. Picture a farmer in Gaul, his taxes heavy, watching Roman tax collectors ride past. The empire's wealth rested on the provinces, and resentment simmered in distant lands. The legions, stretched thin across vast borders, relied on emperors who could command loyalty. Marcus Aurelius, for all his wisdom, left a troubled succession. His son Commodus, impulsive and vain, hinted at darker days. The Pax Romana was a golden thread, but threads can fray. As Rome basked in its glory, its people dreamed of eternity, their city a light that would never fade. But what happens when an empire, vast and splendid, begins to feel the weight of its own greatness? The answer lies in the slow unraveling ahead, where Rome's strength will face its greatest test. Imagine Rome under a twilight sky, the year 180 CE fading into the centuries that follow. The Tiber winds through a city still grand, its marble forums and towering aqueducts catching the last light of day. Yet there's a quiet shift in the air, a whisper of weariness beneath the bustle of markets and the tramp of legions. The empire, at its zenith under the 5 good emperors, spans 3 continents, its roads linking the Atlantic to the Euphrates, its ships carrying the world's wealth. But even the mightiest oak can harbor cracks, and Rome, for all its splendor, feels the weight of its own vastness. As you settle into this final chapter, let the slow unraveling of the Western Roman Empire guide you gently towards sleep, a tale of fading glory and enduring echoes. The decline began subtly, like a shadow lengthening across a field. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, left the throne to his son Commodus, a man more suited to the arena than the palace. Picture Commodus in the Colosseum, clad as a gladiator, his sword flashing for the crowd's cheers, while senators watched in uneasy silence. His reign, from 180 to 192 CE, was a fracture in the Pax Romana. Taxes soared, conspiracies multiplied, and Commodus's paranoia turned Rome's streets into a stage for purges. His assassination, strangled in his bath, brought no relief. Civil war followed, with generals vying for the purple. Picture the Forum, its stones stained with ambition, as the empire's unity began to fray. The Severan dynasty, beginning with Septimius Severus in 193 CE, restored order but at a cost. Severus, a soldier from Africa, ruled with an iron hand, telling his sons, "Enrich the soldiers, scorn all others." Imagine legions along the Danube, their loyalty bought with gold, their swords propping up an empire grown too heavy. The Severans built grand monuments. The Arch of Severus still stands, but their rule leaned on military might, not the Senate's consent. Inflation crept in, the silver denarius losing its shine as emperors minted coins to pay restless troops. Picture a merchant in the Forum Boreum, his purse lighter each day, bartering figs for bread as prices soared. By the 3rd century, the empire faced a storm. The crisis of the 3rd century, from 235 to 284 CE, was a tempest of invasions, rebellions, and economic collapse. Picture barbarian tribes, Goths, Vandals, Franks, sweeping across the Rhine and Danube, their war cries shattering the frontier's peace. The Sassanid Persians pressed from the east, capturing Emperor Valerian at Edessa in 260 CE, a humiliation Rome had never known. Imagine a Roman soldier, his shield battered, standing watch on a crumbling fort, wondering if the empire could hold. Civil wars tore at Rome's heart, with emperors rising and falling, some reigning mere months. The empire splintered, Gaul and Palmyra broke away, their own rulers claiming crowns. Yet Rome endured, its resilience a quiet fire. Diocletian, rising in 284 CE, was a reformer with a vision. Picture him, stern and practical, dividing the empire into 4 parts, the tetrarchy to ease its governance. He fixed prices to curb inflation, rebuilt the army, and fortified borders. His reforms were a bandage, strong but temporary. Imagine a farmer in Hispania, his taxes doubled to fund the legions, grumbling as he sowed his fields. Diocletian's persecution of Christians, seen as a threat to unity, lit fires of martyrdom that would outlast his reign. When he retired, the first emperor to do so willingly, his system crumbled, as ambition reignited civil war. Constantine, emerging in 306 CE, reshaped Rome's soul. Picture him at the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, seeing a cross in the sky, his soldiers painting the Chi-Rho on their shields. His victory, and his embrace of Christianity, turned a persecuted faith into the empire's heart. Constantinople, his new capital on the Bosporus, rose as a second Rome, its walls strong, its churches gleaming. Yet the West faltered. Picture Rome's streets, once vibrant, now quieter as trade shifted east. The empire, split into east and west, grew apart, like siblings drifting in time. The 4th century saw Rome's borders buckle. Barbarian tribes, pushed by Huns from the steppes, flooded in. The Visigoths, granted refuge, rebelled after betrayal, sacking Rome in 410 CE under Alaric. Imagine the city, its gates breached, its temples looted, as citizens fled or hid in despair. The Vandals followed, seizing North Africa and sacking Rome again in 455 CE. Picture the Forum, its statues toppled, its grandeur fading like a dream. Emperors, now puppets of barbarian generals, ruled in name only. Romulus Augustulus, the last Western emperor, was deposed in 476 CE by Odoacer, a Germanic warlord. Picture a boy emperor, his crown too heavy, surrendering power in a quiet Ravenna palace. The Western Roman Empire was no more, yet Rome's story did not end. The Eastern Empire, later called Byzantium, thrived for centuries, its domes glittering under an Eastern sun. In the West, Rome's legacy lived in its laws, roads, and language, shaping the medieval world. Picture a monk in a candlelit scriptorium, copying Latin texts, or a village built atop Roman stones, its people unaware of the empire's ghosts. The church, now Rome's spiritual heir, carried its light forward, its cathedrals echoing the basilicas of old. As you drift deeper into this tale, imagine standing on the Palatine Hill, the wind carrying echoes of Romulus's first walls, Caesar's triumphs, Augustus's peace. Rome fell, but it never truly vanished. Its stories, carved in stone and memory, whisper through the ages, a lullaby of a city that dreamed of eternity. What legacy does such a city leave, when its marble crumbles but its spirit endures? The answer lies not in the past, but in the dreams it still inspires, as you close your eyes and let Rome's final notes carry you to rest. As the final whispers of Rome's story fade, imagine standing on the banks of the Tiber one last time, the river's surface catching the soft glow of a crescent moon. The 7 hills, now quiet, hold the echoes of 1,000 years. Romulus's humble walls, Caesar's soaring ambition, Augustus's golden peace, and the slow, aching decline that scattered an empire's dreams. Rome was more than a city. It was a heartbeat, pulsing through centuries, its triumphs and sorrows woven into the fabric of our world. From the laws that shaped modern governance to the roads that still trace Europe's spine, Rome's legacy lingers, a gentle reminder of what humanity can build and what it can lose. As you rest tonight, let the weight of this eternal city settle around you, its stories a lullaby to carry you into dreams. This journey through Rome's rise and fall was crafted to soothe, to wrap you in the calm of history's embrace. Each chapter, from the she-wolf's den to the fall of Romulus Augustulus, was a thread in a tapestry that spanned continents and centuries. Picture the Romans themselves, farmers, senators, soldiers, and poets, whose lives, so distant yet so familiar, built a world that still shapes our own. Their voices, though long silent, speak through the stones of the Colosseum, the arches of aqueducts, and the words of philosophers copied by candlelight. Rome fell, but its spirit endures, a testament to the resilience of human dreams. Thank you for joining me, Sherry, on this tranquil voyage through time. If this tale of Rome has lulled you toward sleep or sparked a quiet curiosity, I invite you to stay with us. Our next video will carry you to the rolling hills and glittering courts of France, where history unfolds with the elegance of a Loire Valley chateau and the fire of revolution. From the Frankish kings to the storming of the Bastille, the story of France is another bedtime journey, rich with intrigue and beauty, waiting to guide you into rest. So, please, like this video to let me know you enjoyed this sleepy history, and subscribe to my channel for more tales to calm your nights. Hit the notification bell to join us for France's story, where new heroes and dreams await. For now, close your eyes, let Rome's echoes fade, and drift into the peace of sleep. Good night, and I'll see you in the next story.